man, there's so many good things you just shared. I'll start with to reflect. I think something too, you mentioned like how we never entered foster care at any fault of ourselves. And I think that's a really important place to like hold and center a conversation as systems leaders. And because on one end, it's like, how do we, and this is language that's starting to come out, how do we move upstream? Like when families can be supported in a way that, preservation can occur, that's important. On the other end, there's some, this is my take, and I realize in larger spaces of child welfare, maybe isn't always popular, but I think it's important to say, some people really are bad people. I mean, and in those situations, there's always a need for child services. There's always going to be a need for like, hey, like we do need to protect the welfare of the next generation. We also need to do our best to say, how do we as a system not create the need? To share on that, this is an example. My biological mom, genuinely full of love, was prescribed painkillers, and unfortunately lost the battle to what led to a addiction because of the opium epidemic. My dad, when I was a year old, my family is from, of all places, Iran, and my family is Assyrian, which is an indigenous community in the northwest corner of Iran, heavily persecuted, and so there's an Assyrian diaspora. And my biological father was already in the US going to medical school, and his visa was revoked because of the escalating conflict. At the same time, most of my family got refugee status because of the diaspora situation. And so my dad was deported when I was a year old. You can see how a system created a need for child welfare that probably wasn't necessary. And looking at case files, my uncle, who is a landscaper, his wife's a dentist, and his 2 kids, my cousins, are in medical school, doing exceptional. When I was a year old and I was entering care, the parental termination of rights letter ended up going to his house because that is where my dad had listed his address. They called DCF, and I've seen the files to confirm this because I'm nosy, and they wouldn't place me there because, in part, there was a language barrier. And so I look at it, it's like, not only did I probably not need to enter child welfare, I also was robbed of my culture. I don't speak Arabic or Assyrian. I speak English and a tiny bit of Spanish. A lot of hours of studying. And so, I don't look at that with anger or regret or resentment. I look at it as, how do we make sure that doesn't happen today? Because that system's getting in the way of preservation of family. And to touch on another thing you said that I thought was just so important, and I was like, yeah. It's crazy to me that you had to be as resourceful as you did to be like, hey, yeah, we did need loud voices, because we've been met with no's. And it's like, wait a minute, life was so abstract on so many fronts. How is this part of life concrete? I remember, kids are resourceful. I don't know if this happened to you. I had a buddy in high school who we still talk to once in a while, also in foster care. And he had a great worker. I had a lot of workers. And he had all these brochures of all the resources. And he's like, hey, bro, like, you get this. I'm like, what do you mean I get this? I don't get any of this. And it was so crazy because, like you said, it's not only about what resources exist. How do we make sure that it's not about luck in finding the resource? It's just, how do we make sure the system takes luck out of the equation? Thank God you and I met the right people. Not everyone meets the right people. And that's part of the problem. And just to close out, that's why for us, language too, I never want to diminish someone's existence to hey, I'm not Chris the foster youth. I'm 30 years old. And in that same energy, I never want the people we work with at Sun to feel like a case file. So I mean this very seriously. I refer to every one of my students as future colleagues, because that's what they are. They're our future colleagues. And we have a track record to show that. We have quite literally alumni that we now work with, which is amazing. And that's what it should be. It's nope, this isn't a foster youth. This is a young adult who's experiencing something. And that may be part of their identity, but they're still our future colleague. they're just a little bit early on their journey still.
Yeah, I definitely love that you do that, and I think, like, again, like, that's just so important.